Hey guys, Solly here, and today we are looking at how to tank Mythic Loomithar. So this boss has been a bit of a pain for my guild, and it's taken far too many attempts, in my view. However, there are some mechanics which people need to learn, and some of the phases which we needed to truly understand. And dependent on your comp and your damage output, can change on how you want to approach this. So keep that in mind. If you are like a guild which has absolutely got loads of blasters in it, you may find that this tactic doesn't necessarily work for you. But if you're like an average C aspiring guild, top 1,000 or whatever it might be, or if you're in race to world last, this is probably a tactic which will work for you. Or even if you are just slowly progressing Mythic, as and when it comes, this should work. So before the boss itself then, and you pull the boss, there are a few things that you want to do. First, you need to place some markers around the room. So you can see here that we've got purple, green, yellow and orange. And hopefully you have a weak aura pack, like Liquid's weak aura pack, or Northern Sky, or something along those lines, which will interact with these. Now this is for the Pylon mechanic, which is a Mythic only mechanic for this fight. And other than that, the fight is very similar to Heroic, just with more damage going out, more damage needed, and a few additions to the mechanics you're already used to. Throughout the fight then, Pylons will spawn on the outside of the arena at each of the coloured locations. Now, this Pylon will fire a beam towards the boss, and you'll see the beam as I play the video. And you need to have somebody stood in between the Pylon and the boss to prevent the beam from hitting the boss. When the beam is hitting, it will apply stacks, and it is around 16 stacks in total. So the way in which you manage this mechanic is by having 4 groups of 2 people. You want 1 to be a melee and 1 to be a ranged. So in each of the 4 groups, you want 1 melee, 1 ranged, and then you need to assign those 2 people to a colour. When the Pylon spawns on their colour, the melee will stand in front of the beam and will take 8 stacks. When they have taken 8 stacks, they then move out, and the ranged person moves in and will take the last 8 stacks. The reason why you want to use melee first is because when the webs, the circular webs, start to come in, you want your melee to be able to switch to those as quickly as possible, and if they're stood soaking a beam, they can't. So melee goes first, and then that will give them the ability to switch to the tangles when they come up. The other thing is to make sure that everybody is aware of this mechanic, because if somebody is targeted by an ability that prevents them from taking their beam soak, they need to call out in your voice comms, I need a backup on orange. So one of your designated backups should then move into the beam and take over. So if everybody knows how this mechanic works, it allows you to have cover if people either die or if they have been targeted by a mechanic. You'll see that as we go throughout the fight though, so let's get into it. You are going to lust on pull. Now the reason why you want to lust on pull is to give you more space in phase 2. So if you are a guild around our level and with our damage output, it will be more worthwhile for you to use lust at the start of the fight, which will help you transition into phase 2 quicker. And the reason why that is because when your players are targeted with the webs, they will leave and run out to the edge of the arena, and they will drop their webs on the floor, and it will start to put area denial all around the arena. And the more of that you have on the floor, the less space you will have to work with in phase 2. So that is the reason why. Exactly the same then on Heroic. Whoever is tanking the boss will be targeted with the frontal beam. So the main tank will get it, and it looks exactly the same. So you can see here that it's coming out, and the tank needs to make sure that they hit the tangles and knocks the shield off. Now as the second tank, you need to press your taunt button before the frontal goes off. So I've got this weak aura here that says taunt, and as long as I press my taunt, this weak aura will disappear, and I know I have then got aggro. The boss will not switch targets until after the cast is finished, so you need to press it. Now you can see here that I've turned my camera so that I am looking behind me. Now the reason being on Mythic is there are 2 webbed circles that will start to encroach, and you need to hit both of the tangles. So the way that we did it is our main tank always hit a tangled to the right of the one that I was going to hit. So you can see here, there's one here, and then there's one just behind it to the left, and I want to aim my beam at that one. And you can see here that I'm positioning myself, I'm making sure that I'm aimed over it, and there we go. This shield has been removed, I can see it, I've hit it. At this point, all DPS need to switch from the boss and need to hit the tangled, and that does include melee DPS. This caused so many arguments in the guild at times. You could see people were checking details to see who was switching, who wasn't, and such. And yes, I know it sucks for melee to leave the boss and to go and hit, and some classes aren't very well designed for it, but you need to get these tangles down as quickly as possible, so everybody needs to switch. When this happens, you can see now on my screen that I have bait. So that means that a mechanic is coming out, which is going to target 3 players. And these 3 players are always ranged, and they are always healers. I don't believe melee can get targeted. What happens is, the 3 people will have a circle drop on the floor underneath them. So you can see it here. There you go. And what you want to ensure is that they are dropped underneath the boss. So all ranged and all healers should be stood underneath the boss at this point. So when the circles are coming in, they need to get under here. And the reason being is, when this mechanic is happening, you are also getting players targeted with webs. So you can see I've got 3 players here, and they've all been targeted with webs. So they've been pulled in underneath the boss. So they always go underneath the boss. They then need to run out and snap the tether and get out the boss. If your players are dropping these purple circles over here, where my mouse is, where my weak auras are, they have to run from underneath the boss over the top of it, and they're likely to get hit, died, and you need everybody alive at the end of phase 1, ideally. So have all of your range and all of your healers underneath the boss. You wait. When these circles come out, then everybody runs out. Now, these webs here then, what needs to happen is they need to be ran out, and they need to be dropped, and they need to be dropped as neatly and as close to each other as possible from where you came in at the start of the room. So in a moment, you'll see the frontal come out. So the tank frontal's coming out in 5 seconds. You can see people soaking the beam here. Now, as tank, you can take that beam and help out. Okay, so it's just worthwhile mentioning, if you are in a position to do so, you can take it and help your players out. So you can see here then that we have started at the entrance. So this is the entrance where you come into the boss room. So if you have come in from the boss room and you're looking at the boss, we have dropped it off on the right hand side. Now you need to make sure when your webs are running out, they are getting as close to each other as possible whilst not breaking them on top of another one. Because if you break it whilst you're on top of another one, that person will get stunned and most likely die. They will need either a rescue from an evoker or a grip from a priest, for instance, to save them. So just bear that in mind. The reason why you need to keep these as tight as possible is because when you get into phase 2, this will still be here, and this gives you less space to move the boss, and to, most importantly, space to stand during the pushback mechanic, which you will see. So you can see we're just breaking along, and as tanks, all we're doing is making sure that the tangles that we are breaking are the ones to the right of where we're dropping the webs off, so that people don't have to run a million miles when they're dropping it off. So we just slowly move around the room to the left, and so on and so forth. When the boss reaches 100% energy then, the boss will then do a big AoE. attack, everybody needs to get to the edge of the room. You can see that people are targeted with webs, so they will go and drop their webs off as close as they can to the existing ones, and people who aren't webbed are going to go and move to the right hand side. So they're the people dropping off the webs, and then we all stand to the right. You wait for the purple circles to come out, and then you move back into the boss. As long as you are getting the soaks, the pylon soaks done correctly, and as long as your DPS are switching to tangles as quickly as possible, it is a fairly straightforward phase. The most awkward thing as tank is making sure that if you are the second tank, it's making sure that you hit that second tangled, because if you stand too close to the main tank and you get hit by his beam, when you take yours, you will die. So just make sure that you're watching where it goes. That is the first phase in a nutshell. That will then take us to, and I'll go to, where should we go to? Around, I'll try and get it to about 55%, yeah, just here. So the boss is now at 55%, and we've rinsed and repeated these mechanics. At 55%, these tangles will come in, we'll break the wall as quickly as possible, and we'll do the tethers, and then we will have called out that we are just going to focus boss. So if any more tank frontals and tangles come out, we know that we have the DPS below 55% to push the boss. If you push the boss to 50%, it will phase. So you now see that it is phasing into stage 2. If there were any circles coming in, they would all disappear. So have the trust and the faith to push and get the boss to 50%, because they will disappear, so you can just ignore them. So phase 2 is the most difficult phase in my opinion, and it is the one that took us the most amount of practice. So what you can see here is the main tank is going to start with the boss, and he is moved to orange. So we will always start with the boss at orange, which is where we first started to drop the tethers off. So you can see there that the area denial, the webs on the floor, are just starting there. We then have two frontal groups. One is melee, one is ranged. Ranged take the first soak. So the main tank will keep the boss exactly where he is standing, and all of the range will start to make their way around to the front of the boss, and the melee will stand just to the side. When this frontal goes off, it will do a large triangular frontal cone, which is exactly the same as in Heroic, and everybody who is assigned needs to make sure they are standing in front of that frontal. If you don't have enough people in that frontal when it goes off, the boss will get a shield applied to it, which you will need to DPS down, which is in a sense just giving the boss more health. This phase is all about killing it as quickly as possible before you run out of space. As soon as that frontal goes off, I then taunt the boss, and the ranged will run away, and they will go as far away as possible to make sure that the melee have enough space for the next mechanic, which is the pushback. Now you will notice when I taunt, I will tend to keep the boss exactly where he's standing, and I'll only do that on this one, and the reason being is that at this moment in time, melee can still hit the boss where he stood without taking damage from the purple goo that's on the floor underneath him. So I'll keep him where he's standing. Ranged are all running away, so you can see they're all running miles away to make sure that they're out of the way, and the pushback is coming in. Now on Mythic, when the pushback comes in, everybody will have a purple circle around them, and they need to make sure that they are spread out and they are not overlapping, because you will die if it overlaps. So melee can stay close to the boss, ranged are well out of way. Now when this goes off, I will let the pushback push me away a little bit, and then I will stand there and I will let the tank the boss take a few steps towards me. So you watch it go off, bang, okay, the boss takes a few steps towards me, so the melee now have all of this space around the boss to make sure that they can still hit him. The key thing in this phase as a tank is ensuring that you have positioned the boss well enough so that DPS have as much uptime as possible, and have space to do the pushback and to dodge the circles when they come out as well. The pushback is where the damage intake comes as well. So it is where your healers need to have some really good healing cooldowns prepared. It's rotated. People will need to use health pots, health stones, defensives during this phase. The frontal is not so bad, and most people can live it, but the next part, when the pushback comes in, is where the damage really comes in. So you'll see here, the melee are coming in front of the boss because the frontal's coming out. You watch your feet, because during this phase, so you can see here, like, I mean, you can't see, we've got an AMZ up, yeah, we've got the frontal line coming out, but there is a circle underneath us, which my melee don't want to be stood in, ideally. So you can see that some of them see it and they move to the left, which is really good. As soon as the boss goes off, that frontal goes off, the second tank picks it up and moves the boss, and I will roll out to the side of the on the left-hand side of the boss. So I always move to the left-hand side of the boss. And the reason why I do this, and you might not necessarily need to do, but as tank, when this pushback comes in now, I move on to the purple, and I'll just soak this damage. As tank, you can use your defensives properly, mitigate it, and you'll be fine. When you do that, you're freeing up a lot of space for your DPS and healers to stand in. Okay? After the pushback, frontal, so all ranged were in there, and a couple of the healers, and the frontal is always aimed towards the wall. As soon as the frontal goes off, because I'm on the left-hand side of the boss, I then taunt the boss and I pull him a few steps forward out of the purple goo on the floor. This boss can be difficult as a tank to move, and the two best times to move him are immediately after the frontal and immediately after the pushback. The bigger move is typically done after the frontal, and a smaller move after the pushback. So you can see here I'm on the left, the frontal's just gone off. I taunt the boss and move him as much as I can. I position him so that I can move into the middle again, and then I immediately roll to the right and I face the boss towards the wall, making sure that I pulled him forward enough so that the melee have just got enough space to DPS. This phase is just you practicing, trying. You've got to make sure that you kill it before you run out of space, and that can be quite quick. So yeah, practice your positioning. As tanks, you just need to get it right. So that's what I did. I stood to the left of the boss. I stepped back there. You can see it. Taunt, move him. Melee have still got all of this space. Ranged have got all of this space. I move on to the left, so I've just freed up all that space there. I jump to the right, and I move the boss out of the purple goo, and I keep it as close to where we were standing a minute ago. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the fight. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next one.